Has been hard on all of us, especially when it comes to youth. And today we're having a serious straight talk with Risa Edwina about teen depression and how you might be able to help save a life.
One of the issues that we're seeing during this pandemic is depression, anxiety, and that leading into suicide. So we are going to talk now with Risa Edwina from Ho'oko LLC about this, in particular having to do with our youth. This is an issue during the pandemic. So Risa, start by telling me some of the concerns that we're seeing.
Right. As you had mentioned, Tanya, we are seeing an increase in depressive and anxiety types of symptoms in everyone, but particularly in youth. And we're surmising that the reason this might be the case is because there's such a drastic change to the world and our society, and life as they knew it. They are so used to being able to go out at the drop of a hat and do what they want to do and socially interact. And so many places are now closed down or there's restrictions to them. And so this has led to such a different life for them. And there has become a hopelessness that we're seeing in them, particularly with not knowing when it's going to end or if it's going to end. Some of them have also been very concerned about contracting COVID, the pandemic, and really, worrying about even going outdoors. We have some who never had anxiety before or had any issue with leaving their house, kind of having that issue now. So we're seeing those types of things come up right now. And as a result of that, this hopelessness is creating ideations or thoughts about not wanting to be here on Earth.
And of course, we see constantly the numbers of COVID cases, but another concern, the number of suicide. And what types of rates are we talking about right now?
So, Tanya, it's kind of alarming. The National Center for Health Statistics found actually in 2016 that the leading cause of death among young people between the ages of 10 and 24 is suicide, and that's specifically here in Hawaii. In 2018, the American Foundation survey also found that the second leading cause in young people between the ages of 18 to 34 in Hawaii was also suicide. Recent survey done by the Center for Disease Control, and this is during the pandemic time, found that our young people between the ages of 18 to 24 have been seriously contemplating suicide within the last 30 days. So it's actually quite serious in this time period.
What are some of the symptoms and warning signs that we should be looking out for?
Some of them include the hallmark symptoms that we hear that are connected with suicidality, including isolating, changes in appetite and mood, irritability, no longer wanting to do things that they normally like to do. You might even hear talk of suicidality, of not wanting to be here on Earth. You might see them start to give things away. Even things like a recent breakup with a girlfriend or boyfriend or changes in their friendships are great indicators that something could be wrong.
What if, heaven forbid, your child or someone close to you is exhibiting these types of behaviors? What should you do?
Tanya, the biggest thing I think is to really, especially as a parent or for your loved ones, is to really just remain calm in the whole situation. You want to avoid trying to badgering by asking too many questions or scolding, and just really being there to be a listening ear and offering them help and support during that time period. Another practical thing that especially parents can do is to make sure during that time period, especially if you're feeling that your child is at suicidal risk, is to really safe-proof your home. You lock up objects that are sharp, hide away the pills, and especially if there are firearms in the house, to put those away and lock those away especially. Parents could also seek help from the pediatrician as well as a therapist, or even having the child talk to someone in the family or in the community that child trusts. All of this can really help to support that child. And as a parent, you want to be mindful to watch of any kind of changes, especially as Risa was saying earlier, changes in their behavior and the moods, and really trust your gut as a parent too if something is not quite right.
Obviously, this is such a serious subject, but there are resources available for parents and for youth who might be thinking about that. So tell me, what are some of the options when we're having this type of suicidality possibility?
One of the main things I think would be to help young people have a balanced life. And by that, I mean engaging in social activities and extracurricular things outside of the home, as well as balancing social interactions with friends and family. And ultimately, we want parents to really intimately know their children's lives. Who are they talking to? Where are they going? What are they doing? What are some of the things and struggles that they're having? And develop that kind of a relationship that would allow children to come and talk to them. Additionally, we want parents to know that there are resources out there for for them, like the crisis hotline here in Hawaii, or even the National Suicide Hotline that they could contact. And they can, if they would like professional help, they can contact our office at 808-375-7712 or www.ho'okollc.com.
Thank you both for talking about this. Obviously, there are families this could be a serious issue for, and we don't want them to get to that stage. So, as always, we appreciate the straight talk.
Thanks, Tanya.
Thank you.
You know, we love the opportunity to talk with them on topics that often aren't discussed, especially in families or on TV. So if you need advice or you recognize some of the warning signs that they talked about, certainly reach out for help. There are those hotlines, there are professionals who are designed to do that. And, you know,